Welcome to another episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and I'm back. So last week, I knew that I was going to have a short week as far as yoga teaching goes because I had it in the works to travel to New York for Mother's Day weekend to visit my family. And that meant driving up on Friday and coming back on Sunday. In the episode before this, I revealed how we are making a sudden, yet not so sudden, move to Atlanta. And that move is coming up like very soon. And so when we looked at, all of the weekends that are ahead of us and what we have to do as far as packing and, just closing one chapter and getting ready to start another, it just seemed like this was the best space for me to have a chance to go up and spend some time with my mom, spend some time with my dad and, my family on my dad's side. My family most of them have been vaccinated. So my mom, my dad, my stepmom, my niece, my sister-in-love, my brother, like just lots of folks, and thankful to them for doing that. I don't want to make this about that because this episode is not about that. But, I have concerns about the vaccine and I'll just leave it there. But I took a test when I drove up on Friday or before I drove up on Friday just to make sure, that I was negative as far as COVID goes, and that I could be able to sit with my family and that they could comfortably sit with me. And so, my mom especially said, listen, if you get a negative COVID test, I have the vaccine. Like, yes, we can sit together. I'll even give you a hug. We just have to do the mask and, all of that. And so just really, again, I've had my feelings about the vaccine, but I've been very kind of quiet about it or just kind of talking to people here and there because I realize the vaccine is a very sensitive and, big thing that's happening in our lives right now. But I've had my feelings about it. And when I sat, just spending time with family this weekend, when I sat and just kind of listened to their reasoning, just different reasonings why they did it, it's just like, okay, I get it. And so it's just giving me something to think about, and I'll just leave it at that. But the point is, I had my negative COVID test. They had their vaccine, and that just allowed us to really sit, and really be together, and just have some time, which I really, 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 really appreciated. And, waking up this morning and I knew right away coming home, I was like, yeah, I know what I'm going to pot about. But, just waking up this morning and just feeling so full, shifted in a way. I can't really put my finger on how, but, every time I go up to visit my family, I come back feeling, just good and yummy and loved, but I feel something. And maybe it's closure, maybe it's peace. I don't know, but there's some sort of shift, but it's a shift that has me feeling good and ready and peaceful, or at peace. And so coming back to why I'm back on the mic this week and why I wasn't there last week, which is where I started going. So I had my short yoga teaching schedule last week to accommodate for, me getting ready to travel to New York. And I've just, we just had a lot going on behind the scenes. You can hear my voice is like super raspy these days. And so I just felt like, well, I'm going to teach just 2 classes. This was last week. Instead of 4, I'll have a day just off to rest and just get things together. And then Friday, I'm out the door and going to New York. And so last Monday morning, which is now my new recording day, my body was just like, no, you got to stay in this bed. Just no, because I get up, fairly early on Mondays to record. And I've felt like that on some Mondays. We all have those days where we're like, oh, I just don't feel like doing life today. But then we find that space and we're like, all right, come on, let's go. And so last Monday, I was just like, you know what? I got a short yoga teaching week. I'm taking time to just rest a little bit. And so I'm just going to rest my voice because clearly, again, it's sounding a little raspy. And I'm just like, why is this happening? But you take a person who naturally talks a lot, and, now I'm like teaching. Well, I was always teaching yoga, but I think it's the difference of teaching virtually and I project my voice a whole lot more, just to make sure it's coming across the screen and all of that. I did try the whole headset thing, and it just felt clunky and like it was in my way. But I may have to come back to that, just to really not have to project my voice so much and be able to reserve my vocal cords. I feel like such a diva saying that too. Like, I need my tea and my honey, like my throat. I feel like such a diva, but I'm just like, no, but clearly something's happening here. So I think it's that, recording. I'm just using my voice a whole lot more than I actually already use it, if you can believe that, especially for those who know me and know me well. So, yeah, last week just seemed like a week to just take it easy, to prepare for this, very big ramp up that is ahead of us as far as, moving and shifting our lives and all of that. And so I was gonna like sort of announce it, if you would, like to my community or, on my socials. And then I'm like, well, no, because somewhere I was like, maybe I'll just record one midweek and like pop up with like a surprise podcast and, put it out on Friday before I go to New York. And then the week just kept going by and I was like, yeah, I don't think that surprise is going to happen. So I did make an announcement. I think I made an announcement, in my newsletter last week. Said I'm just taking a break a little bit from potting, a shortened, yoga teaching week, and I'll be back next week. And here we are. It's already next week. And that's a reminder that I got to write my newsletter today for this week. So yes, I am back. Excuse me. And, my intention is to have this episode be a little bit shorter. I know there are a couple of episodes when I come on and I'm like, this is going to be a short episode today. And then it ends up being like an hour and 15 minutes. But between my voice, and just me sort of having this intention of this being a shorter episode this morning, I'm going to try to keep this under an hour, we'll say. And excuse me for the random voice clearing. David's really good about going in and editing out, some of the moments where I have to clear my throat, but some of them may have to stay. And so my apologies for that. It's like I said, I just got this whole funky throat thing happening right now. And I started noticing it not last week, but at the sort of the end of the week before last week. And I was just like, because I could feel it. I can really feel it, like, oh, okay. And I just thought it was like here and there. But now I kind of feel it my voice progressively getting a little more hoarse. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? Like, knock on wood, I don't have a cold. I'm not sick. I got my negative COVID test, right? So I just think, my voice is just kind of like, yeah, Rachel, you use me a lot and I need a vacation or at least some tea with some honey. So anyway, enough of my voice, but I do apologize for any random throat clearing that David might not be able to edit out. And again, for all of that, I'm going to try to keep this to a little bit of a shorter episode today. But I didn't know exactly how I was going to frame the weekend that I just had. I just knew I wanted to talk about it, because I am just so grateful. And here come the tears, like, for my family. I have known and have always been blessed with knowing how beautiful of a family I have. So, we won't get into my personal dynamics of like my life. I did all of that in like the first episode. And this episode is about bits and pieces of my life. So I'm always weaving in stories, right? So I don't want to get into too much of the background because I want to stay focused on this present weekend that just happened. But just being mixed, and my parents divorcing early and me having step parents, if you would, by like 7 years old. So like at 5, my parents are together, and at 7, different people are in my life as far as my parents and their partners go. And there was a lot of shift in that space, in my life. And, I only got to briefly experience my parents together. I really only have like 1 or 2 vague memories of when we three were all together, as far as like they were certainly at graduations together and, other life events post their getting divorced. But their time of being together and being married and me being in the house with them, those memories are like super vague. I really only have just like one memory. But so, that's at 5, and then there's the shift of my parents splitting up and, how that shifts in my household that I was growing up. And then, again, by 7, there are these different partners. And then you bring in my stepmom's family, who, is a predominantly white family. And, and then here, like, now I'm in my stepmom's world and, you know what I mean? And I just think about, and then like I have my brothers from my mom's first marriage, and I'm a part of their world too. So like their dad and their grandmom, their paternal grandmom, like I'm in, because I'm the baby sister. So I'm just like, I'm around, right? So I'm in all these various worlds that are extensions of my parents, but not me experiencing these with my parents together as the nucleus, if you would. So, in other words, having to navigate two different worlds, if you would, as far as race goes, right? Because when you have your parents, they have two different worlds because they're two different people. But just as far as race and society, all that type of stuff goes, right? So, my parents weren't together to help me navigate these different spaces. It was like I was with my mom, in her spaces, and my dad in his spaces, right? And so it would just be me and my head in one world that looked one way, and then on the weekends I'm in another world that looked another way. And so I'm saying all this to say that, I always felt, and I still feel like looking back, like if there was like any one person that was just like, I don't like this kid, or I don't like what this kid represents, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want this kid around, or, whatever the case may be, as far as like extended family goes, like my stepmom's extended family, even like my brother's paternal family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if there was just anybody that was just like, I don't like what she represents. Like, I always feel if there was just one moment of that, as far as like growing up, I think I would have been a totally different person. And I've often said that. And so when I come back to saying how blessed I am, it's absolutely the blessing of having like a mom and a dad and a stepmom who all love me so, so much, who just want the best for me, who want my happiness. They just truly, genuinely just love their kid. They love their kid. They wanted this kid. They love this kid. And I'm blessed that I'm super close with my brothers on my mom's side. I'm blessed that I'm super close with I call him my, excuse me, another moment. I call him my stepbrother because that's in the technicality of things what it is, but like he's my brother. I've known him since I'm 7. And so, so I'm super close with my brother Adam and his wife Jill and Kay Lou. I love my Kieran Lou, my nephew, their baby. And so, I'm super close, with like everybody in my circle. And there's just a lot of love in all of the circles. And so the feeling of fulfillment that I had driving back last night and just waking up this morning, it's just really sitting in that blessing. I'm, especially recording this like the day after Mother's Day, I have, Dave's mom is not here. My bestie's mom is not here. I have yoga students, friends, their moms have transitioned and rest with the ancestors. So even recording this the day after Mother's Day, how blessed am I that, I have my mom, but I also still have my dad and my stepmom. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, I'm 43 and I still have my big 3. And, I see the shift of my parents getting older and things like that. And I have like all these worries about, oh my God, like, what will life look like without them? But then I just have to always remind myself, like, be present because they're here, they're healthy, they're fine. Like, we're not gonna worry about the future. We're gonna stay present in the now. And so I know I'm so blessed to not only have, my mom, but 3 parents. You know what I mean? Like 2 moms and a dad in a way. And so, or not in a way, 2 moms and a dad. And so, just blessed from that. But Making or preparing for this move, this transition to Atlanta has been weird. It hasn't felt scary, and it definitely doesn't feel bad or wrong. Like, in every way, it actually feels really right. But it's been feeling surreal, like, okay, this is happening. Um, because, as I mentioned in the last episode, it's something David and I have kicked around over the years. We've had family members that have tried to encourage us to move down to Atlanta, but, we even talked about it at the beginning of this year, but we didn't, I guess, until I decided to apply to the school for my kid. There wasn't like this real, like, we're moving to Atlanta, we're looking for houses, we're trying to make this happen, we're going to find this school to support it. It was just like, like I said in the last episode, we just threw applying to the school that Voss got into the mix of just having options. But I think as much as we may have kicked Atlanta around, we were kind of all like, yeah, no, we're just going to stay here in Maryland. And then, things shifted and it's like, okay, now we're going to Atlanta. So it just feels surreal. It feels surreal because, as I've been telling folks that I've been talking to about it, like when I really step back and look at it at a macro level, it's like you can see how this has just been lining up, for all roads to lead to this point. So there's just been a lot of different feelings that I've been navigating in this space. And that was also part of the reason why I didn't want to teach a full schedule last week. I was like, I just need time to kind of let, all of this sit. And, I've been thinking and I've been saying often, it's like, I've lived in Maryland 21 years this year, and that's a long time. But now that we're moving, it all of a sudden feels like so short, like it all feels like everything that happened in the blink of an eye. I came down here at 23, completely wet behind the ears, fell into graduate school, to be honest. I think we've shared that story, but fell into grad school because I basically came to DC pursuing a relationship with my now ex-husband, and just being Muslim and moving into yoga and finding, a corporate career in housing finance. And out of that, like, I've just had a million lives here. And now it's just like, okay, chapter's closed, time to move on. And, I've just been kind of letting all those feelings be without trying to do too much of a deep dive. It's like, just, I'm aware that this huge life shift is happening. I'm in a much more mindful place in my life overall. So instead of sort of feeling freaked out or even controlled by, what I'm feeling like, what is this? And just kind of letting it take me to all these spaces. It's like, no, I have this awareness of like, yeah, this is big thing on my plate. It's big. And it's going to make me feel wonky. And I'm just going to leave room for the wonkiness. And if I see that the wonkiness is really trying to get ahead of things, I'm going to pull that wonkiness back, and really just stay connected and grounded to the present. Like, I'm going to try not to let the wonkiness take the driver's seat, because then that will make this like a totally just emotional and much more difficult process. And so it's like, no, you see how things have lined up. You put this effort to apply for the school. So somewhere deep down, you must have wanted to try, So I just leave room to hold space for all of the different feelings that are moving through me. And just with that, I just felt like, yeah, let me just, let me just kind of like take it easy. So going up to see my family, like when I make trips to New York, like in the past, like it'll be like, I'm going to see my mom, I'm going to see my dad. Like those are always the two I'm going to see. And I usually end up going up from anywhere for 48 to 72 hours. And frankly, I have felt stressed in the past because it's like, I really just want to spend time with my mom. I really want to spend time with my dad and my stepmom, see who I can see. But like, I'm the one making the drive up and down. And when I get there, driving back and forth between people's houses. So sometimes like when I get to my mom's house, I just want to sit. Or when I get to my dad's house, I just want to sit. But of course, when people find out you're in town, it's like, oh, come see me, come see me, come see my kids, come see my house, come see this, come see that. And it's like, well, I came from out of town. Why don't you come see me? But everybody wants to show you they're part of their lives, right? And it's like, oh, Rachel's here. I want her. And so in the past, I have very often like overcommitted myself completely. Like, yeah, come on. And then I feel worn out. I feel resentful a little bit, like, oh, and all of this. And so this weekend I was just like, nope, first of all, making the shift. And, I talked about, I've referenced how my dad had a stroke last year, and come to find out it actually wasn't a stroke. It was a brain hemorrhage. And so, that's a different thing for a different time. But I've been calling it a stroke. And then my stepmother educated me on what we're really sort of dealing with here. And so that has weighed most heavily on my heart with making this move. My stepmom is my dad's primary caretaker now. I feel like I'm her emotional primary caretaker now. And so moving, you know, 10 hours further away from them just really, 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 weighed on my heart. And so making the plans for this weekend, it was like, I'm coming up on Friday. I'm going to make sure I come up early enough. I'm going to make sure, because I'm going to be in New York on Mother's Day. So I got to make sure I leave early enough to come back and spend time with my own kid on Mother's Day. But I told everybody, I was like, listen, Saturday is dedicated to my dad, like just straight up and down, because my mom, eventually she wants to maybe make her way down south. But even if she doesn't move, like she'll visit. So she's so excited about us making this move. So I know, God willing, like I'll see mom along the way. Like once I make this move and with my dad in the condition that he's in and my stepmom having to take care of him, I might not see my dad until I come back up for whatever holiday or Christmas or, anything else that might just bring me back up. So it was just like, no, I got to spend this time with him and my stepmom and, my brother, who now, they made their transition from, the Portland area, if you would, last year to now being on the East Coast. So, again, he and Jillian and Kaylu were there. My niece Penelope came. And so it was just a really nice, beautiful time, to sit, with my family in that way. And I was just like, that day is totally, totally dedicated to them. And so I came up with like, okay, especially my mom, because I love my mother, but my mother will definitely be like, well, why don't you go see Phil? Or why don't you go see this person? And just let them know you're here. And so, and then it's because my mom is making the recommendation. I'm making the overcommitment because I don't want to make my mom, feel bad or tell her no. But then I end up feeling bad. So I was like, Mom, listen, this is my plan and I really got to stick to it. I don't want to overwhelm myself. You know what I mean? I really need to spend time with my dad. And even though there's a little more room now to actually sit with my folks, I got myself a little hotel not far away just to let it be like my own little getaway and have some time for myself. Like once it was time to retire for the evening. So I was like, I have a little bit of time for myself, time for you, time for dad, but like, this is what it is. And so my mom, bless her heart, was like, okay, like I want to honor your plan. I just want to make sure you and I have time together. So initially, like I was going to go up on Friday and like see my bestie along the way and then go to the hotel, check in, fairly early, have a good night to myself. And then my weekend would commence. But my oldest brother on my mom's side is like, dude, I moved into this new house like at the end of last year and you have to come see it if you're coming up. And I'm like, bro, like I only got so much time because he lives like 20 minutes north of where everybody else lives in New York. But I'm like, all right, and so begins the obligations. but I was like, you know what? This is my brother. He's proud of this house. In his words, he's like, this is it. This is like the final house, like me and my wife and the kids are going to be in, like, so please come see it. So I reached out to the bestie. I'm like, all right, can we shift from me seeing you on the way up to me seeing you on the way down when I come back on Sunday? Let me go check out my brother, because the hotel I was staying in was like an in-between point between my mom's house and his house. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm really kind of like in the area. Like it would be just really corny of me to be like, no, I can't come. So I was like, all right, bro, I'll come. Shifted around. Told my mom that and so as I'm driving up and I'm telling her like, hey, Mom, I'm going to check into the hotel and go to Phil's. She's like, well, your other brother and I, like, we can come get you from the hotel and like maybe we'll just all go to Philip's house together. And I'm like, okay, that works. And she was like, yes, and then we can have more time together. So that's what ended up happening. I checked into the hotel, had about an hour, maybe about 2 hours to myself, went to the hotel bar that, had some social distance opening, got myself a glass of wine, one glass of Riesling. If anybody watched my Instagram stories on Friday, I shared that it's been a while since I've had a glass of wine, which is interesting. I've always been a lightweight when it comes to drinking, and thankfully so, because yeah, just thankfully so. So I've always been a lightweight, but I drank one glass and I felt like I was three sheets to the wind, like, oh my God. Like, or either that or it was just an amazing glass of Riesling. So, yeah, so I had a glass of wine, got three sheets to the wind, went back to the room and, waited for mom to come pick me up. And then she and my brother picked us up, was able to give my mom a hug for the first time in a year. That was amazing. And then we drove up to my brother's house. Now, my brother was working that night, so I couldn't actually see that oldest brother, but my sister in love, was there. I'm learning to change in law to in love. And my nieces and my nephew, and so they were all there. I am so glad that I went. My brother's house is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Like overlooking, I don't know if it's Catskill Mountain or Woodbury. I don't know all the mountains up in that area, but it's that area, the mountain as their background view, like built-in pool, fire pit, just, and this oldest brother, like all of my brothers are beautiful and each have a story, but Phil, man, one day I'm gonna have to dedicate an episode just to Phil, because the things that he has experienced and the heart of gold that he still has, it's like he's definitely a hero. Over these episodes, at least in the first, I may have referenced a nephew I had when I was born. Like I was born in October of 77. My firstborn nephew was born in May of 77. So I came into this world as an aunt because Philip is significantly older than me. My mother doesn't like putting ages and numbers around her, but I came a little bit later in life. So Philip is significantly old, like could be old enough to be my dad, frankly. And so he had his son the same year that I was born. And I have referenced that I had a nephew who we lost, to street violence in 95 right before, not any violence that he was a part of, but that he was a victim of. And that happened right before I left for college. And so this nephew is Philip's son. And so, for Philip to lose a child and in that way, he's just still this bright, loving man. And, so he's just a hero to so many of us. So I'm so proud of and happy for him. You know what I mean? That he has this just gorgeous house, this beautiful house. And so I was really glad I went. And so even though he wasn't there, like my mom, my other brother and I, we got to kick it with my sister-in-law and the nieces. And we, were only there for like 2 hours, maybe 3 at the most. But it was just the perfect start to a weekend. And my mom felt really good because really the plan was I wasn't going to see her until Mother's Day. And so she's like, oh my God, my daughter's here. She's like 20 minutes away from me. I have to wait 2 more days to see her. So she was going to figure out how to see her kid sooner than later. And I'm glad that we didn't. She felt so good. My mom was just like, I'm just so glad we got to have this time together. So now on Sunday, it will be more time. And it's not that I don't like spending time with my mom. I love spending time with my mom. But just me, Scorpio, slightly Pitta. I'm a little more Vata than Pitta, but I have my Pitta moments, and that's Ayurveda speak. I just can get kind of like rigid about like, this is my plan. And only because it can be this like dig my heels in response to when I overcommit. So the other extreme is like, no, I'm not going to be fluid or flexible at all. You know what I mean? So it's not like I don't want to spend time with my mom. It's just more like, Mom, I got to stick to this schedule. So I was really glad that like that worked out because I know how happy that made her, and I just have to remind myself of that. Not that I have to remind myself like my mom is getting older, like that's just a part of life, but how much it means to her to spend time with her only daughter. You know what I mean? So I'm really, really glad that was fulfilling for her. And so then Saturday was the day that I went to hang out with my dad, and it was nice. I got a chance to sleep in a little bit on Saturday, and then I went to my dad's house, got there between like 12 and 1, and then we were there till 8 or so. And it was just, again, just fellowship and love, and I got to just spend time with everybody. Like I had a little corner moment with stepmama, and I had a moment where I gave some Thai massage to Adam, and Jill and I always have our moments, and I got to even give Kay Lou like a little foot massage and a leg massage and a car massage. So we were kind of like all sitting around on the floor and playing with little toy cars and stuff. And then my niece Penelope took a car and started like running it up Kieran's like leg or arm. And Kieran just paused like, ooh, that feels good. And then he just kept giving each of us like a car and like, you can massage me too. So I started doing it on the bottom of his feet and he was like mesmerized. So I just kind of started like massaging him. So we're just sitting around, we're just having this beautiful moment. We took a walk later with Arlo, Ad and Jill's dog, beautiful dog. And so it's just this beautiful day. We spent time talking about like a little bit of family history. Terry is just like the guru of like ancestry.com, putting all of our different family pieces, like my mom's family, her family, my dad's, Jillian's, David's even, so she's got bits and pieces of our lives. So we had a chance to talk about that because I shared with her how in this Akashic reading Dave and I got recently, I was told specifically like, yeah, you need to do more research on your father's ancestry. And I really do. There's a lot I still need to learn about my mom's family, but I've been told the stories over the years. And so more of like my ancestral altar reflects more of my mom's side of the family. Again, this is just for another episode for another time, but there's some fracturing, in my dad's family and stuff like that. And so I didn't get all of like the knowledge and the stories and this is this person's grandmom and aunt and this and that. Like I know my dad, I know his sister, my Aunt Vicky, who now rests with the ancestors. I know my grandmother, my grandfather, I know like an Uncle Elliot and, like I know a few people, but I don't know like the depths of it. Like I know my maternal grandmother's mother's name. Like I know my maternal great grandmother's name. I know my maternal great grandfather's, so I know those things as far as my mother's side, but not the same on my dad's side. And so I share that with Terry. And so she took some time to show me, what she put together on ancestry.com. And, she's like, through Connie's lineage, you have the most history. Like she was able to put together Connie's lineage more easily than Connie's my grandmother, more easily than my paternal grandfather's lineage. So although I found out my paternal grandfather's father's name was Otto, so I know that now. And so, yeah, so it was just a really beautiful filling day. My dad is, he's in good health, but definitely there's a shift. And I've talked about that with what happened in his brain. And, Terry doesn't know it. Well, she didn't see it, but I'm sure she knows it. But just my dad would kind of pop in and out, because some of it was just overwhelming to have like all of us there because he's trying to, some spaces are spatial for him. And so it's kind of like, who are all these people? And I'm trying to like put it together. And so he would kind of like pop in and then go lay back down. And, and I would sit with him, but then he'd say, no, just go be with them. And that's tough because my dad, will just be there and we engage and we talk for hours and hours and hours. And so, there were times where I'd be there and I'd just be literally choking back tears and nobody would know because I'd just be smiling and still playing. But on the inside, I'm just like, oh my God, my dad. It's just, my dad's my heart, man. Like everybody's my heart. But so to just kind of see him be there, but not all the way there, I just hurt for what he's going through inside his mind and himself. I hurt for my stepmom, and I've talked about that. But yeah, but it was just a beautiful, beautiful day, and I'm just glad I got the time. I did get to sit, with my dad, hold his hand. We talked about Atlanta, and he's just all for it. Go live your life. So I have that blessing. And then yesterday, Mother's Day, I did get to sleep in again a little bit in the hotel, and then grab some Starbucks, went to sit with my mom and my brother Quester, who lives with her. And Quester made me breakfast, which was really nice. And, we sat for 2 hours. The flowers I had ordered from my mom, they were supposed to come on Saturday. They were delayed, but it was beautiful. They came on Mother's Day while I was there, and then I got to see my bestie on the way back. I was only supposed to kick it with her for like an hour. It was like 3 hours. And then I'm on the way back to Maryland, by like 5:30 or 6. And, what was interesting is that, so I'm going to get into like Bergen County geography super quick. So I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey. I grew up in Englewood, New Jersey, right? Born in New York City, but grew up, like the house I grew up in is in Englewood. And my bestie Tawana grew up right down the street from me. And so in Englewood, there's Englewood, Teaneck, Hackensack. So a couple of like Fort Lee, just towns maybe you heard of, maybe not. But these are the cities that are like, the suburban cities that are literally like a stone's throw away from New York City. So these are the cities that kind of like, are right outside of New York City. So Twana, my best friend, moved to Hackensack, I guess 2 or 3 years ago at this point. So when I was coming from mom's house, initially I was going to meet Twana at her house, but she's like, I don't want to get out the house today. Let's meet at Starbucks in Inglewood. And initially I'm like, oh, that's great, because Inglewood is a little bit closer to my mom's house as far as like getting to Inglewood and then getting on the New Jersey Turnpike to get home. And so I'm like, oh, perfect. And then I'm like, well, you know what? I'm really glad she suggested that, because I hadn't thought about seeing Inglewood before I moved to Atlanta, right? Because I moved from Inglewood in 2000 when I came to Maryland. And then my mom moved to Rockland County, New York in 2002. So she sold, the house we grew up in 2002 and then moved up to Rockland County, New York. Rockland County is about 40 minutes north of New York City. So New Jersey has its suburbs outside of the city. Rockland County are the New York, if you would, suburbs outside of New York City. Just a little geography for you. So, I always think about Inglewood, and when Tawana was still living there and I would come up from Maryland, I would always, make it my business to get to Inglewood and all of that. But then once Tawana moved and, just as life continues to go on and there was no person, say, in Inglewood to go visit, I just didn't go check Inglewood. You know what I mean? And so when she said that, I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad, because I just feel like, I need to see it before I go. And that's what's been really interesting about this space with getting ready to move. Like, again, just having a million lives and significant relationships and people, who came into my life. Like, in my head, I've just been thinking about some of those, like the first real relationship I had when I got here, which was not with my ex-husband. As I say, I moved here kind of pursuing a relationship with him. And then before we even got here, that relationship went away. And it would be another 6 years before he would become my husband and then eventually my ex-husband. So in that space of 2000 and 2006, when I first moved here, there was, I think I mentioned the Somali guy. He was Somalian that I met. He was Muslim, and it was through being with him that I started teaching myself, frankly. He didn't teach me about Islam. It wasn't like he's like, you got to be a Muslim to be with me. I just wanted to learn. And I think I may have even shared that I was going to try and convert him to Christianity. So I was like studying his religion to try to tell him why his religion was wrong. And then ultimately I converted, right? Again, a million lives in Maryland. But, the Somalian dude was like a good dude. And we had a relationship for the better part of 4 years. I met him a year, into coming into Maryland. And I was thinking about that because I was just like, I was with him when the sniper, okay, does anybody remember when DC had the sniper? That shit was crazy. So I was with him when that happened. And I was just thinking about that. Like, it took me a long time. Like, I figured out the grocery store and how to get around, but just to be in DC completely by myself, no friends here. Like, I had to really build a whole life here. No family. I had to build a whole life here. And when I met, his name was Lee. When I met Lee, it was like a year in, and Lee helped me navigate a lot of what was the beginning of my life here. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was just going through life, especially when I was in my 20s, so I'm just living life. But now at 43, when I look back and I reflect, I'm like, man, Lee really helped me just not be alone, in this space of building my life here in Maryland. And so, I've thought about that and just different people that I'm like, man, I would love to maybe have some type of closure or say goodbye, but I just hadn't thought about it. So when Tawana invited me to Inglewood, that felt like that. And I haven't told Dave yet, and I know he won't mind. So I'm going to share it here in the podcast, and then we'll probably talk about it later. But like, even yesterday morning, like, Lee will hit me up on, and David and I have had the conversation that we have certain people from our past that we just pulse check. We say, like, they check in with us, like on birthdays and Mother's Day, we check in with them, and it's just like, okay, this person's good, but they're not in our daily lives anymore, but they were a significant part of our lives. So Dave and I have had that conversation about, there's certain people that we still speak with here and there. And so Lee, is one of those people. He'll just kind of, hey, Rachel, you doing good? Voss doing good? You guys doing good? So Mother's Day, he reached out like, hey, Rachel, happy Mother's Day. And again, I've thought about Lee in the space of like, oh man, my life, but I didn't think, let me reach out to him. So when he reached out to me to wish me happy Mother's Day, I'm like, oh man, I'm glad you reached out because, hey, like my little family, we're getting ready to move to the A, we're getting ready to move to Atlanta. He's like, what? He's like, oh man, that's really great. He's so, so happy for Voss and, all of that. And he's just like, whenever you get a chance, he's like, I know Voss has no idea like who I am, but tell him I'm proud of him. And so, he just, was just giving me his love and his congrats and all of that. And then I said, listen, man, I don't want to be all dramatic, but, you were a big part of my life here. And, and again, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm in a much more aware space. At 25, not so much. Now, I've always had a good heart. My heart's always been in the right place, but I was a tough cookie. It was like, I'm a woman. I want what I want. And I'm still like that now, but I'm just much more mindful. 25, I was a pain in the ass sometimes, not meaning to be, but I was. And Lee was with me through a lot of that. And so I'm like, listen, I know I wasn't always a walk in the park, but my heart was always in the right place. But I really appreciate, just you being in my life. Like you're a very significant part of my Maryland life, and that will always carry with me. And so thank you, And Lee's like, oh man, like Rachel, listen, it was a great experience for me too. He's like, I always pray for you. You're a very special woman. Like you'll always have a place in my heart. Like I always will want nothing but the absolute best for you. Like I hope you guys have kids and you just have everything that you want to have. And that felt good, and so, but it was like random, right? Because I've been thinking about it, but I hadn't made the intention of reaching out. It's just like, oh, at some point when we do happen to cross paths on Facebook Messenger, I'll just say, hey, I'm either in Atlanta now. But to be able to tell him felt really cool. And so I was thinking about that. It was him, it was Inglewood, and I was just like, and just other little moments here and there that I say random, but they're not so random, right? It's like life knows my heart. The universe knows my heart. And the universe knows like, yeah, there again, or these people, these places, these things that played a significant part in shaping your life, this very significant chapter of your life. And so it's just really beautiful that I have been presented with opportunities to say thank you, for that experience. Thank you for what you contributed to my life, because all of it plays a part in who I am, and where I'm going. So, I came through Inglewood and, we went to Starbucks and then we just sat in the car and we talked and, we leaned against the car and talked. Like Tawana and I, all we need is Tawana and I. This space doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like all we need is Tawana and I. And so when I pulled off from her, I'm like, well, you know what? I never thought again about Inglewood. And then saying goodbye to the house I grew up in. I only would see that house again here and there whenever I would go through Inglewood. So I drove past the house and I sat in front of it for a second. I didn't want the people inside to think, who's this weirdo? So I just sat and I looked. Normally I'd sit for a really long time and tear up and, oh, I remember this and I remember that. But I just sat for a moment, looked at the bedroom I grew up in, took 2 pictures, said thank you. And then I pulled off and kept it moving and just kind of contemplated it, as I was driving down the turnpike, the New Jersey Turnpike. So getting up on that hour I said I wasn't going to get up on. Yeah, so I guess just to try and bring this all together, what am I trying to say, right? This is me sharing, just the experience of a beautiful weekend and just this place in my life. And here come the tears again. Just gratitude for my family, 43 is a weird space, man. The 40s are a weird space. It's like, it's this beautiful kick-ass energy of like, and I've heard this from other people when they were in their 40s before I got here, that you just kind of get to a place where you just don't give a fuck anymore. Like, it's like, I am who I am, and you try to be your best and stuff like that. But it's like, no more apologizing for certain parts of you, no more being inauthentic. Like, it really is a space of like, I can't do it anymore. I can't not be me anymore, right? So there is that beautiful kick-ass energy. But for me, I won't say it's everybody's experience, but I'm speaking to it because it may be someone's experience. But for me, it's been this really interesting sort of halfway place of like, okay, I have all this life behind me now, but God willing, I still have all this life in front of me. But I'm closer to the second half of my life now. I'm getting closer to the second half of my life. I'm getting further away from that first half, that younger half, if you would. And it's not a freak out about getting old. It's just about kind of how quickly time is moving and like, wow, I'm here. The freak out I am having, quote unquote, is my parents getting older, because I just have these moments where I just think about them not being here, and I can get really into a deep tailspin about it. And I don't need to do that because they're here. So it's weird in that there's like, I still feel young, but I'm not 20 anymore, and I'm not going to do some of the stupid shit I did at 20. But I'm not like, but I feel, maybe I don't feel 20, but I feel good. So it's just been this very like weird space for me. And sometimes it's filled with more worry than it has to be, because I just think like time is going. That means people are going to leave and going to go away, and and I worry about that, right? And so the reason this weekend was beautiful, I worry about my dad. I do worry about my style. There are things I'm legitimately worried about. Not that even them getting older is not a legitimate worry, but that's like future fear, what if based worry. That doesn't serve me. When I say legitimate worry, I mean like I'm worried about my dad, and how his condition is going to transpire. Worry about my stepmom and her managing all of this like on her own, So I worry about those things. But what am I trying to say? So I worry about my family, just again, getting older, stuff like that. But when I was around them all this weekend, the feeling that I left with is like, our roots are so strong. Our roots are so strong. I'm crying with a hoarse voice now. Like, this is really sexy, right? But, and that's why I'm so blessed, because, there's so much love on my mom's side. Like, my mom just did an amazing, amazing job, with me and my brothers. Like I said, my oldest brother is 20 years older than I am, and then there's two other ones behind him, and they're all each 6 years apart. The oldest one is 20 years older, then 14 years older, then 8 years older. And yeah, once you reach your 40s, you're just kind of all on common ground. So, they treat me more of an adult now than they did, say, like when I was 20. But they could also be kind of detached, because it's like I'm their only sister and I'm the baby, and it's like whatever. But we're all so close. Like, we're all so close. Like, even when we go down to Texas for our family reunions, the other family units are like, man, the New York unit has it on lock. Like, you guys are so close. And it's just all a testament to my mom, my brothers and I, the three of them and I, we have a different dad. So it's not like we all grew up with the same, nucleus of the parents. Like, my mom is the common denominator. And so we're super close. And, even with my dad's family, like, I say fractured by way of like, there's just a lot of stuff there. There wasn't as much closeness maybe as there is on my mom's side, right? So my dad was just like, who was good to him and who, like he just kind of kept his family circle close. So I only know so much, but the people that I do know, and like my stepmom, is love, like, oh, I'm just gonna cry my way through the final moments of this. But like, I told Terry this weekend, she's my stepmom, I said, we had to have been connected in another life. And she said, oh, I absolutely believe it. And I never thought about that before. I just always thought about how beautiful it is. And she came into my life at this young age, and it was scary and freaky and weird for me. But she is the person who gave me yoga. Like, she gave me yoga. And I told her, it's like, you love purple. It's not like, oh, I love purple because Terry loves purple. It's like, my work in this world is connected to her. My work in this world, my purpose in this world is connected to her. And so with that, I was like, we had to have been connected in another life. And she just has just such unconditional love for my dad, for me. Just even my mom telling me to tell Terry, like, listen, I know I'm Larry's ex-wife, but we're all family now. And let Terry know she's not alone. I'll cook, I'll do whatever. Like, just let her know she's not alone. And just being able to tell Terry that, Terry receiving that and saying, give Cletus my love. Like, you know, this could have all been like, I don't fuck with Cletus, that's Larry's ex-wife, or I don't fuck with Terry, he married her after me. Like, there's none of that bullshit. It's always just been about what is best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is all of us getting the fuck along, even if there's stuff behind the scenes, which I don't think there ever was. But it was just always about what's best for the kids. And by teaching us that, we are now like that with each other. Because eventually, Adam and Jillian and I and, Philip, Claude, and Quester, my brothers on my mom's side, like, eventually we're going to be the ones at the top, so to speak, right? Like, we're going to be the elders. And us being close is a major, major part of that. And I realize that now. And that's what it is about 43 is you kind of see like where it's going, right? Like at 20 and 30, you're like, oh God, 40, 50, that's like old. I don't have to think about that. Then you get here and you're like, okay, shit. And so, I just feel like, I worry so much about, I don't want to be too far. How am I going? How am I the one going furthest away? And I don't want to leave, if they need me. But when I realized, like, I've always known how strong our roots are, but when I realized that this weekend, that's the feeling of fulfillment that I walked away with. It's like, I can go to Atlanta because no matter where I go, I could go to the moon and we'll be fine, because when it's time for us to come together, we will. Like fucking Voltron, man. Like, I'll come from Atlanta, and Jillian and Ad will come from the Catskills, and Penelope will come from Ithaca, and Philip will come from his nice new house, and Claude, who's in Atlanta, will come. And, like, we'll all come when we need to come and when we need to be there because the roots run so deep. And I'm just like, I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, we'll be okay. And, like, even seeing my house, like, I don't want to get too deep into my house because it's going to be an Instagram post. I've already kind of thought about what that's going to be. But even just looking at that house and thinking about that little girl who grew up in that house, who had all these dreams, all this life, and here I am. And it's like, some things happened that I dreamed of. A lot of shit happened that I didn't. And a lot of shit happened that I would have never thought of that would happen, like divorce and, an abusive marriage, like just things, single mom. Like, I didn't dream about that as a kid, but it happened. And here I am. So when I looked at that house, it was just like, thank you to the house, for holding me as a little girl. And now, Maryland is I moved to Philly, sort of. Yeah, I moved to Philly when I was in college, but then I came back home. But Maryland was like the first big move. Like, and so now this is like my second big move, maybe my third, if you will. So this is my second or third chapter. And it's like, go forth, child. Your roots are here. Your roots will always be here. Now go forth. And so, I guess just to leave you with something, loves, like, I know everybody has different family structures. I know people who have lost parents, who may have had fractured relationship with their siblings. Everybody's family looks different, but whatever that nuclear unit is for you, anybody listening to this, I know I don't have to tell you to be grateful, but I'm going to tell you, just be grateful. When you feel lost, when you feel confused, when there's like a big shift of moving, go back to your roots. Sometimes that's what it is. Like, think root chakra, right? Think your foundation. Like, go back to your roots. Go back to who you were. If you're feeling just like you need some clarity, you need a sense of self, like, go back to where the people know your name. Go back and look at your old house if that's available to you. Like, just take some time and sit. And if you're far from your family or physically sitting with them is not an option or possible at the moment, create a family altar. Separate those who are deceased from those who are still with us in the flesh, because that's two very different energies. And as I've learned, you don't want to mix those on an altar. Those who are with the ancestors have their space, and those who are living have their space. Maybe create a family altar, maybe get to know your family tree. Like, whatever it is that can keep you connected to the roots. And I'm saying this generally speaking. I get some people have had traumatic events in the past, and so it might not be so easy, but to the extent that it's healthy, to the extent that you're able to, and just sort of generally speaking in that way, excuse me for the sniffling and stuff, go back to your roots. Just take time and say thank you for your family. If you've been thinking about your mom, give her a call if you're able to, or your dad or your brother. Like, if there's somebody that's been coming up, like, I got to give him a call, but you keep pushing it to the side because of life, right? Like, pause and give him that call. Just, if you're younger than 43, life is fleeting. And you may know this already, or you may still be in that place where life feels sort of like endless, right? But life is fleeting. And just take time to be grateful, to say thank you. And, whatever home is for you, just give yourself permission to go back there sometimes. And it might mean leaving your spouse, your partner, just going by yourself and just sitting and remembering your dreams and your hopes, and, just being held by, not so much going into the past and in a anxiety ridden driven kind of way of like, oh, I can't fix this, I can't change this, but just going back to the past and sitting there and remembering and letting that help to usher you and hold you, in this current space and as you move forward. And so I'm blessed because not all of my family listens to the podcast, and I get it. Some folks are just like, I just can't sit and listen to somebody talk, but a lot of you do. And I just want to tell you, Terry, Mommy, Daddy, Adam, Jillian, Arlo, Kieran, Penelope, I love you. I love you. I love you. And I'm so grateful for you. You are my joy. You are my roots. You are my foundation. And I'm grateful for you. My brothers on my mom's side, absolutely. Well, Quester may listen. So, Quester, I love you. All of them, I love you. But yeah, just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for choosing me. Thank you to the universe for giving me to them. I was thinking about Adam a lot too. And, Adam and I, again, technically step. And so it's just beautiful because Adam is mixed like I am and stuff. And I recall, I think Adam may have brothers like on his dad's side, maybe not as close, you know what I mean? But he definitely has siblings, I believe, on his dad's side. Forgive me if I'm wrong, Adam. But technically, Adam's experience coming into this earthly plane via Terry is like he was, he's like an only child, and I think about that because I'm like, just with where we are in life now and things shifting with, my dad and, our parents kind of getting older and stuff. I think like, I was just like, I'm so glad Adam and I have each other, like Adam has Jill and Jill is a badass. Jill, I love you. But, the beautiful thing about siblings is that you have a shared experience in this life. And, when you're growing up and maybe like, get away from me, all this, sibling stuff. Not that Adam and I ever had rivalry, but just sibling shit, right? But when you get older and things start to change and your parents' health is compromised or something like fucking COVID happens, you have like this person that you have this shared experience with that nobody else has this experience with but you and these people, however many siblings you may have. And so I'm so glad that Adam and I, in that way, because I have my brothers on my mom's side, so I have another place, but I'm so glad Adam and I have each other on my dad's side, because we have each other. And when we were talking to Terry before we left, just about, being with my dad, and I was just like, Terry, you have us, like, this is what we're here for. And it just felt really good, to say that. So Adam, your big sister is always here for you. I love you. I'm proud of you. And we got each other and we got this. So, I'm going to pause there because I'm just going to keep crying. And I'm on an hour and I said it was going to be less than an hour. So, sorry if this episode felt a little bit all over the place. In my head, it feels like it is, but it's just from the heart. And so, hopefully it resonates. All right. And so with that, I'm just going to close with the lyrics from a song I was listening to as I was
driving back from New York. It's a song called Home. And so there's The Wizard of Oz, with Judy Garland. And then there's The Wiz, which, if you don't know The Wiz, which is the African American version, if you would, of The Wizard of Oz. And so it was, I think it was a Broadway play, but it was definitely, yes, it was a Broadway play because Stephanie Mills was Dorothy, I think, in the Broadway play or the stage play. And then Diana Ross was Dorothy in the movie version. If you haven't seen the movie version of The Wiz, check it out. Beautiful, beautiful choreography and stuff. Michael Jackson was in it too. So anyway, Stephanie Mills sang this version of Home, a song called Home for The Wiz. That's just, heart-wrenching. And so I thought about that song on the way back and was thinking about it this morning. And so I just want to read part of the lyrics for that. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home. I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. Wind that makes the tall grass bend into leaning. Suddenly the raindrops that fall, they have a meaning. Sprinkling the scene makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. It sure would be nice to be back at home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time to be my friend and let me start again. Suddenly my world is gone and changes its fate, and I still know where I'm going. I've had my mind spun around in space and watched it growing. And oh, if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe the things that we see. Tell us, should we try and stay, or should we run away? Or will it be better just to let them be? Yeah, I'm going to keep going. Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy, but it's taught me to love, and it's real. It's so real. It's real to me. And I've learned that we must look inside our hearts to find a world full of love, like yours, like mine, like home, like home. So this is a long song, and I was reading from the lyrics directly, and that pause was like, should I keep going? Yeah, I'm gonna keep going. So I didn't probably do it any justice. I know I didn't do it any justice reading the lyrics. So again, if you have a chance, Stephanie Mills' Home. It's just beautiful, poignant, beautiful, beautiful song. But yeah, so this episode is dedicated to home, to Englewood, New Jersey, to the city that raised me, to my mom, my dad, my Terry, my brothers, my Adam, my Jill, my Kieran, my Penelope, my Marlo, my Peebo, like my people, my Texas folks, like the people I know, the people I don't, like Tawana, my best friend, like thank you for being my home and for being my place that I can return to, when I need a sense of love and direction. That's where I go back to. And so, again, whatever home is for you, loves, if you don't have a chance to go back there, at the very least, just say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, with that, loves, I got a trail of snot running down my nose. I got a yoga client in 30 minutes. So, and she's texting me like, hey, you ready? So, I'm going to go ahead and end it there, as always, by saying, may you be happy. May you be free. May you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.